Have you ever felt like your heart was dragging behind you, still chained to someone who's long stopped caring? Imagine waking up each day with the weight of a ghost you can't shake off. Now, what if I told you the only thing holding you there is you? Today, we're going to dive deep, not into the story they told you, but into the story you've been telling yourself. And here's the kicker: emotional detachment isn't cold or heartless. It's the most radical act of self love you'll ever commit to. But let me warn you, what you're about to learn might challenge everything you thought you knew about love, identity, and freedom. I'll take you to that turning point, the moment you realize that freedom isn't found in letting them go. It's in finally returning to yourself. Buckle up, this won't be your average self-help pep talk. Unless your idea of average involves breaking psychological chains with the intensity of a plot twist. Ready? Or are you still waiting for a sign from the universe? Because, spoiler alert, this is it. Have you ever found yourself saying yes when everything inside you was screaming no? Picture this. It's 2 a.m. Your phone lights up again. Another message, another demand, another emotional tug. And there you are, exhausted, drained, staring at the screen like a prisoner staring through the bars. Now pause for a second. Who gave them that much access to you? Here's the truth most people are too afraid to admit. People will treat you the way you train them to. And if you've trained them that your time, your energy, your emotions are all up for grabs 24/7, don't be surprised when they keep knocking harder, louder, and with zero guilt. But what if I told you that a single decision, one line drawn in the sand, could shift that entire dynamic? Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're doors that decide who gets to enter and on what terms. The problem is, most people don't even realize they've left that door wide open, lights on, snacks on the table, and a welcome sign blinking in neon, and then they wonder why they feel invaded, violated, consumed. Let's get something straight. Emotional detachment doesn't begin with forgetting someone or blocking them on your phone. It begins with setting a limit, with having the courage to say, "This is where I end and you begin." Sound easy? It's not, because the first boundary you'll have to set is with yourself. Wait, have you ever tried setting a boundary and then immediately felt guilty about it? That's not just you being too nice. That's conditioning. Somewhere along the line, you were taught that your value came from being available, agreeable, and endlessly accommodating. And so when you finally try to take your space back, you feel like a villain in your own story. Let me flip the script. You are not cruel for protecting your peace. You are not selfish for guarding your energy. You are not dramatic for wanting to feel safe inside your own mind. You are reclaiming territory that was never meant to be occupied by anyone but you. Now here comes the part that stings. Most people won't like the new version of you, the one that doesn't answer every text, the one that takes a breath before replying, the one that says, "I'm not okay with that." Why? Because they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. They were sipping from your emotional cup without ever asking how it was being refilled. So yes, they might call you distant, cold, detached. But what they're really saying is, "I don't like that you're no longer emotionally available for my convenience, and that's not your burden to carry anymore." Let me ask you something. A little pattern interrupt, if you will. Have you ever tried saying no and then explained it for 10 minutes like you were writing a college thesis? Why do we do that? Why do we feel the need to justify our boundaries with charts, emotional PowerPoints, and a sad backstory? One word: fear. Fear of being abandoned, fear of disappointing someone, fear of being seen as too much or not enough. But here's a secret most emotionally free people know. No is a complete sentence. It needs no apology. It needs no explanation. And when you learn to say it without trembling, the world around you starts to shift in ways you never imagined. That's where things get exciting, because once you start setting boundaries, you start noticing something incredible. Your emotional bandwidth expands. Your peace increases. You sleep deeper. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head before bed. You don't jump every time your phone rings. You laugh more. You think clearer. You realize you've been living in survival mode for so long, you forgot what calm felt like. And no, this isn't just about distancing from toxic people. It's about realigning with your own values, your own rhythms, your own emotional climate. But here's the urgency. Every day you delay setting boundaries, you reinforce the idea that your emotional health is negotiable, that your time belongs to anyone who demands it, that your energy is free for the taking. And let's be honest, how much longer can you keep giving pieces of yourself away before there's nothing left to give? Boundaries are the fire break in an emotional wildfire. They stop the damage before it consumes everything. Yet most people only realize this when it's too late, when the burnout hits, when the resentment festers, when the anxiety becomes chronic. I know what you're thinking. What if setting a boundary means losing someone? What if they walk away? Let me offer you a chilling but necessary truth. If your connection to someone can't survive the weight of your boundaries, it was never love. It was control. It was dependency. It was convenience. And yes, that realization might break your heart for a moment, but it will set you free for a lifetime. Boundaries reveal the real ones. The people who respect your limits, honor your needs, and still choose to stay, those are your tribe. The rest were just passing through, and maybe it's time you stopped building homes for people who were only meant to be tourists in your life. And speaking of homes, have you ever noticed how we lock our doors at night without questioning it? You don't sit there wondering if your neighbor will feel hurt that they can't just walk into your living room at 3 a.m., right? So, why do we treat emotional access like a public sidewalk? Why do we let people trample through our inner world, muddy shoes and all, without even asking them to wipe their feet? It's time to treat your emotional space with the same care, the same discernment, the same fierce protection, because your peace, your mental clarity, your spiritual balance is sacred. But here's the twist, and you need to hear this clearly. Setting boundaries isn't a one time declaration, it's a lifestyle, it's a daily practice. It's in the silent moments when you choose not to respond. It's in the tense moments when you say, I need space, even if your voice shakes. It's in the sacred moments when you hold yourself with so much love. You refuse to let anyone tear you down again. The world won't always applaud your boundaries, but your soul will. And in the end, that's the voice you need to honor most. Because the greatest tragedy isn't that people will cross your boundaries, it's that you'll let them. Have you ever lost sleep trying to rewrite a moment that's already gone? Played the same conversation on a loop in your mind, thinking if you had just said one thing differently, the outcome would have changed? We all have. It's almost like we think our anxiety is a time machine. Like if we just worry hard enough, we'll bend reality to our will. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to face. Some things are just not ours to fix, control, or carry. And yet we grip onto them with white knuckles, afraid that letting go means losing. But what if I told you that letting go is where you finally win? You see, there's a strange kind of ego in believing we can control everything, that if we just try hard enough, plan enough, sacrifice enough, care enough, we can keep things from falling apart. But what if the very act of trying to hold it all together is what's tearing you down? That constant emotional labor, tracking others' moods, predicting their reactions, managing their problems like you're their unpaid life coach, has a cost. And the price is usually your peace, your joy, your clarity. That's the trap of control. It promises safety but delivers exhaustion. Have you ever tried to hold sand in your palm by squeezing it? What happens? The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. That's exactly how control works. You push harder, you worry more, you micromanage every detail, and then life, in its beautifully chaotic way, does what it wants anyway. Someone leaves, the job ends, the plan collapses, and you're left holding stress with no results to show for it. Here's where the fear kicks in. Because if I'm not in control, then what am I? Powerless, vulnerable, exposed. The truth is, you were never in control of those things to begin with. What you were in control of was how you responded. That's your power. That's your domain. And it's the only thing that was ever truly yours. Let's pause for a second and ask the obvious question. Why do we crave control so badly? I'll tell you, it's because control gives the illusion of certainty. And humans, well, we hate uncertainty. We'd rather live in a known hell than an unknown possibility. Even if the thing we're clinging to is toxic, painful, or dead, we hold on because it's familiar. Because at least if we're in control, we can pretend we're safe. But here's the kicker. Safety based on control is always temporary. It's like building a house on sand. You can decorate the inside, hang up pretty curtains, even throw a party, but the moment the tide comes in, the foundation crumbles. Now, don't get me wrong, wanting control doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. You're not crazy for wanting to protect yourself. You're not broken for needing stability. But what if real stability didn't come from gripping tighter, but from learning to stand tall even when the ground shifts? What if the freedom you've been chasing is hiding in surrender, not control? That word, surrender, scares people. It sounds like defeat, doesn't it? Like giving up. But true surrender is not about giving up your power. It's about giving up your illusion of power over things that were never in your hands. Think about the weather. You can check the forecast, you can dress accordingly, but you can't stop the rain. Now imagine standing outside in a thunderstorm, yelling at the sky, trying to command it to stop. That's what trying to control people, outcomes, and life circumstances looks like. You exhaust yourself in the storm instead of seeking shelter within. And let me tell you, some of you are walking around soaked to the bone, shivering from emotional hypothermia, not because life is cruel, but because you refuse to get out of the rain. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Ever tried arguing with a GPS? You miss a turn and it calmly says recalculating, but you're yelling back, "No, I was supposed to take that exit." It's ridiculous, right? Yet we do this emotionally all the time. Life says we're taking a different route now, and instead of adapting, we panic, protest, freeze. But guess what? The path is still unfolding. The route is still leading you forward. You don't need to know every turn in advance. You just need to keep moving with faith that what's beyond the curve might be better than anything you planned. And yes, sometimes it's not just about plans changing. Sometimes it's people. People you love doing things you don't understand. People hurting you when you thought they never would. People leaving without the closure you thought you needed. This is where the emotional grip gets the tightest. Because when someone else's actions or choices impact us deeply, it feels impossible to separate ourselves from it. But let me say this clearly: you are not responsible for other people's decisions. You can care, you can grieve, you can hold space, but you cannot control. Trying to manage someone else's behavior is like trying to steer a ship from another boat. It only leaves you stranded, drifting in a sea of disappointment. What if, stay with me here, what if your peace isn't on the other side of fixing it, but on the other side of accepting it? That's a hard pill to swallow, because acceptance feels passive, but it's not. Acceptance is radical. It takes strength to say, "I didn't want this, I didn't plan this, I didn't expect this, but I will rise anyway." That's the moment power returns to you. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped wasting your energy where it wasn't wanted. Energy leaks happen when we pour into the wrong things, arguments that go nowhere, fantasies about alternate timelines, revenge plots that never play out. It's all just mental currency spent on things that yield no return. So, how do you shift? You start by asking yourself one powerful question: is this mine to control? If the answer is no, release it. If the answer is yes, own it fully. Don't half heal, don't halfway grow, don't pretend to surrender while secretly plotting a comeback. Control thrives in confusion, but clarity cuts through it like a blade. And once you get clear about what's yours and what isn't, your world transforms. You stop running in emotional circles. You stop chasing ghosts. You stop fighting battles that aren't yours to fight. Ever seen someone drag a broken suitcase through the airport, wheels wobbling, zipper half open, contents spilling out, and yet they keep yanking it along, refusing to let it go? That's what it looks like when you carry emotional weight that no longer serves you. The past, the pain, the unspoken expectations, all of it. You tell yourself, "I can't let go yet," as if dragging it longer will magically fix it, but it won't. All it does is slow you down. The journey is hard enough without extra baggage. And then there's the urgency, the one no one talks about. The urgency of life passing you by while you're busy obsessing over things you can't influence. Every day spent replaying the past or predicting the future is a day stolen from the present, and the present is where your power lives. The longer you try to control what isn't yours, the more you lose what is. Time, energy, joy, and here's the cliffhanger. What happens when you finally let go of that rope you've been tugging on for years? What happens when you stop trying to rewrite a story that was never yours to edit? Have you ever driven somewhere and realized once you arrived that you remember absolutely nothing about the journey? Like your body was behind the wheel, but your mind was miles away, tangled in thoughts, worries, and to do lists? That right there is how most of us live. We're awake, but we're not here. We're breathing, but we're not present. Life is happening in real time, but we're stuck rerunning the past or fast forwarding to the future. And here's the silent tragedy: we're missing the only moment that actually exists. This one, right now, this breath, this heartbeat. And for many, that realization doesn't come until they've lost something they never fully appreciated to begin with. Mindfulness is not some mystical practice meant only for monks on mountaintops or people with too much free time and a favorite herbal tea. It's the discipline of coming home to the present moment over and over again, even when your mind wants to race ahead or double back. And in a world that's obsessed with speed, distraction, and overstimulation, mindfulness is nothing short of revolutionary. Because to be fully here is to take your power back. When your attention is scattered, your power is diluted, but when your awareness is anchored, your life sharpens into clarity, like a camera lens snapping into focus. The fear, of course, is that if we slow down, we'll fall behind. That if we pause, we'll miss something important. But let's be honest, how much are you actually catching right now in this rushed, scattered state? Be honest. You're halfway listening to conversations, multitasking like your life depends on it, scrolling on autopilot and calling it productivity. Meanwhile, your nervous system is fried, your thoughts are racing, and your soul is whispering, "Can you hear me?" That's the silent scream we all carry, the deep knowing that there has to be more than this noise, more than this cycle of reaction, escape, and numbness. Let's do a pattern interrupt. Right now, take a breath. No, really, not one of those shallow, chest level sips of air. A real breath. Inhale slowly, hold it. Exhale even slower. Did you feel that? That moment of stillness? That's mindfulness in its most primal form. And yet it's something we forget to do consciously all day long. We breathe to survive, but we don't breathe to live. Because living requires presence, it requires awareness, it requires participation in the now, not just a checklist of what's next. And let me tell you, there's danger in postponing your presence. There's danger in saying, "I'll be happy when," or "I'll rest after," because what you're really saying is, "I'll live later." But later is a myth. Later is a lie. Later is where dreams go to die. Mindfulness snaps you out of the illusion that fulfillment is somewhere out there, waiting to be found. It brings the miracle back to where it always was, in this very breath, this very step, this very heartbeat. The urgency isn't in doing more, it's in being more here for the life that's already unfolding. But let's be real. Mindfulness isn't sexy at first. It's not a quick fix. It's not a high. It's uncomfortable. It forces you to feel things you've been avoiding. When you're mindful, you notice the tension in your jaw, the pain in your chest, the way your thoughts spiral when you're triggered. It exposes the noise you've been trying to drown out with distractions. That's why so many resist it, because it's easier to stay numb than to sit with the storm. But here's the twist. Mindfulness doesn't create the storm, it reveals it. And once something is seen, it can finally be healed. Have you ever caught yourself spiraling in thought and said, "I can't stop thinking"? That's not entirely true. You can observe the thought without becoming the thought. That's what mindfulness teaches you: to step back, witness, and choose. Just because your mind offers you a narrative doesn't mean you have to believe it. Mindfulness introduces you to the gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap is your freedom. That's where the magic lives. Not in controlling life, but in consciously responding to it. Imagine how different your life would be if you weren't a slave to every reaction, every impulse, every emotion that came knocking. And the ripple effect is profound. When you're mindful, your conversations deepen. You listen, not just to reply, but to truly hear. When you eat, you actually taste your food. When you walk, you notice the rhythm of your steps, the feel of the breeze, the sound of the world moving around you. Life becomes less of a blur and more of a symphony. You don't have to chase peace. It begins to find you in the simplest of moments. And those moments, they add up. they become a life. But here's the catch: mindfulness doesn't eliminate pain, it transforms your relationship with it. Instead of drowning in it, you learn to hold space for it. Instead of resisting discomfort, you get curious. Why am I feeling this? What story am I attaching to this emotion? That's the shift. Mindfulness makes you a witness instead of a prisoner. And once you stop trying to escape your feelings, they stop holding power over you. Emotions are just messengers. They come to deliver something. And when you meet them with awareness instead of avoidance, you finally get the message. Let's talk urgency again. Most people wait for a crisis to wake up, a diagnosis, a heartbreak, a loss. Suddenly, the trivial things fade and the present moment becomes sacred. But what if you didn't wait for the alarm to ring? What if you woke up now by choice, not by force? That's the gift mindfulness offers: the ability to be fully alive without needing pain as your teacher, the ability to experience life with both hands open without clinging or pushing away. Here's a question you probably haven't asked yourself today: where am I right now? Not physically, but mentally. Are you here, or are you 3 hours ahead in a conversation that hasn't happened yet? Are you here, or are you tangled in something someone said last week? If your mind is everywhere but now, how do you expect to feel whole, grounded, content? You can't build a life of depth if your awareness never touches the ground. Mindfulness is your anchor in the storm, your compass when everything else spins. And still, there's resistance, a voice that says, I don't have time to sit still. But that's like saying, I don't have time to breathe. You don't need hours of meditation or silent retreats. You need intention. One conscious breath, one pause before reacting, one moment of looking your loved one in the eye and being there. This isn't about perfection. It's about returning again and again. You will drift. That's okay. The power is in coming back, always coming back. Because if you don't, the alternative is sleepwalking through your own life, being so consumed by thought that you miss the richness of what's real. Imagine reaching the end of your days and realizing you were never present for them, that you lived in a mental movie and called it life, that you were always waiting for the next thing, the next fix, the next milestone, and missed the miracle unfolding right in front of you. What happens when you realize that the moment you've been waiting for was always this one? When was the last time you asked yourself, what am I worth? Not your salary, not your relationship status, not your social media followers, your actual worth, the deep, unwavering value of who you are when no one's watching and nothing is performing. The terrifying truth is most people never ask that question because deep down, they're afraid of the answer. They're afraid they won't measure up, afraid they'll find they've been overgiving, overextending, over-explaining, hoping someone else would confirm a value they never fully claimed for themselves. But here's the twist: no one can give you what you refuse to give yourself. Self-worth isn't a reward for success. It's the foundation you build success on. Yet, we live in a world that trains us to trade our value for validation. You get the job title, and suddenly you're somebody. You lose the relationship, and suddenly you're not enough. It's a brutal cycle of conditional self-esteem, and it turns people into performers, not believers. But here's the question that breaks the loop: who are you without the applause? Who are you when there's no spotlight, no one cheering, no one watching? If the silence makes you doubt yourself, then your worth is still on lease. Let's pause for a second. Imagine walking into a store where nothing has a price tag. You ask how much something costs, and the clerk says, what do you think it's worth? Now imagine applying that logic to yourself, letting others set your price based on what they're willing to pay. That's what happens when you don't prioritize self-worth. You get undervalued, underpaid, underloved, not because you are less, but because you've forgotten to act like more. And here's the cliffhanger: what changes when you stop negotiating with your value? It sounds empowering, right? But it's not easy. Prioritizing self-worth means making hard decisions. It means saying no when you're used to saying yes just to be liked. It means walking away when you're terrified of being alone. It means honoring your boundaries even when guilt tries to guilt trip you back into smallness. That's the cost of self-worth. But the payoff, it's everything. Because when you finally believe in your value, you stop begging others to. Let's not sugarcoat it. A lot of people confuse self-worth with arrogance. They say, you think you're better than others now? No, that's not what self-worth is. Self-worth says, I'm not better than anyone, but I'm not less either. It's not about comparison, it's about conviction. It's about standing in a room full of noise and still hearing your own voice clearly. That kind of inner clarity doesn't come from compliments. It comes from courage, the courage to accept yourself completely, not just the polished parts, but the messy, complicated human parts you usually hide. And here's where the fear kicks in, because what if, after all the healing and self reflection, you still don't feel like enough? That's the scary part of this journey. You'll have days when the old scripts come back, when your worth feels like it's shrinking in the shadow of someone else's approval. On those days, it's tempting to revert, to please, to shrink, to perform. But those are the moments when your self-worth is being forged, not in the easy times, but in the times you want to abandon yourself the most. Here's a pattern interrupt. Ever notice how a phone with 5% battery gets all the attention, but when you're at 5%, you keep going like it's fine? You ignore your needs, you push through burnout, you treat your well-being like a luxury, not a necessity. That's what happens when you prioritize productivity over self-worth. You think your output is proof of your value, but you are not a machine. You're not here to be efficient, you're here to be whole. And you can't be whole when your self-worth is on life support. The urgency of this work can't be overstated, because every time you accept less than you deserve, you teach the world how to treat you. Every time you stay silent when you should speak, you reinforce the belief that your voice doesn't matter. Every time you settle, you carve the story of almost deeper into your identity. But what if you stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing yourself, not just in theory, but in practice, in your relationships, in your career, in your mirror? Now let's talk about relationships, because they're often the arena where self-worth gets tested the most. It's easy to feel valuable when someone's loving you right. But what about when they withdraw, when they criticize, when they leave? Do you crumble, or do you remember who you are? Too often, we let someone else's treatment of us become our self-perception, but their behavior is not your mirror, it's their reflection. Your self-worth cannot be outsourced. It has to be built brick by brick from within. And building it requires truth, not the curated version of you, but the real one, the one with scars and insecurities and awkward quirks. That version of you is still worthy, still enough, still deserving. But you have to be willing to stop editing yourself for approval, because the moment you perform, you abandon the very thing you're trying to protect, your authenticity. And here's the thing. No amount of external validation will ever fill the void that comes from self-abandonment. It just won't. It's like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. So how do you begin? You start by listening to the parts of you that you've been silencing. The voice that says, this doesn't feel right. The instinct that whispers, you deserve more. The feeling in your gut when you're treated like an option, not a priority. Stop dismissing those signals. They're not weakness. They're wisdom. They're trying to guide you back to your worth. And once you start listening, you start choosing differently. You stop chasing love and start attracting it. You stop settling for crumbs and start claiming the whole table. And no, it won't happen overnight. Prioritizing self-worth is not a one-time affirmation. It's a daily decision, a practice, a battle even. You'll slip. You'll second guess. You'll have moments of self-doubt so loud they drown out everything else. But you'll also have breakthroughs, moments where you walk away from something toxic and realize you didn't die. Moments where you speak your truth and feel stronger for it. Moments where you look in the mirror and finally see someone you recognize, not because you changed, but because you came home to yourself. This isn't just about feeling good. This is about survival, because when you don't know your worth, you're more likely to tolerate pain, betray yourself, and stay stuck in cycles that drain your spirit. But when you do know it, when you truly own it, you become unshakable. Not because life stops throwing storms at you, but because you finally realize you are not the storm. You are the anchor. And that anchor doesn't get its strength from how others see it. It gets its strength from what lies beneath. And if you've never asked yourself what lies beneath your surface, then maybe the real journey begins right there.